The biting December wind howled like a hungry wolf across the desolate plains, whipping snow into stinging eddies around the solitary figure of Ethan Caldwell as he dismounted from his prized stallion, Midnight. The Redemption Creek train station was little more than a weathered plank building, a lonely sentinel against the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Montana Territory. He'd come to collect a special order of breeding stock records, delayed by the early blizzards, a mundane task for a man whose vast cattle empire, the Circle C, stretched further than the eye could see. But as the steam engine hissed its mournful arrival, spewing a plume of gray against the bruised twilight sky, Ethan's attention was snagged not by the train, but by a sight that sent an unexpected chill, colder than the wind, down his spine. Huddled on a frost-covered bench, partially obscured by a drift of snow, was a woman. She was small, almost lost within the folds of a threadbare coat, her shoulders hunched against the biting cold, a single battered carpetbag at her feet. Her face, pale and drawn, was turned towards the approaching train, but her eyes, wide and haunted, seemed to look right through it, as if seeing specters only she could perceive. Ethan, a man whose heart, though weathered by loss and hardened by the frontier, still beat with a profound sense of justice, felt an immediate, inexplicable pull. The conductor called out the station name, his voice swallowed by the wind, and then, with a clang and another great sigh of steam, the iron horse began to pull away, leaving her behind, a forgotten piece of humanity on a frozen platform. Ethan's jaw tightened. He was a man of means, a millionaire many times over, though he wore his wealth with the quiet dignity of the land itself. He had known sorrow, the sharp, unending ache of losing his beloved Sarah years ago, a wound that time had scabbed over but never truly healed. Perhaps it was that enduring ache, that understanding of profound aloneness, that made him step forward, his spurred boots crunching on the icy ground. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that this desolate station, on this bitter night, was about to change his life forever. The wind might howl, and the darkness might creep in, but a different kind of storm was brewing within him. A storm of protectiveness, of a righteous anger against whatever circumstance had left this woman so exposed, so vulnerable. He was Ethan Caldwell, and he did not turn away from suffering. He approached her slowly, deliberately, not wanting to startle her further. His shadow fell over her before his voice did, a low, gentle rumble that was a stark contrast to the shrieking wind. "Mom? Are you all right?" Her head snapped up, and for a moment, the fear in her eyes was so potent, so raw, it was like a physical blow. She clutched her worn carpetbag tighter, her knuckles white. He saw then that she was younger than he first thought, perhaps in her mid-20s, with fine, delicate features that hardship had etched but not erased. Her lips were blue with cold, and a violent shiver racked her small frame. I am waiting," she stammered, her voice thin and reedy, barely audible above the gale. "For someone?" Ethan asked, keeping his tone soft, unthreatening. He could see the lie forming in her eyes even before she spoke. Yes, he is delayed. He knew instinctively that no one was coming for her. The last train had departed, and Redemption Creek offered little in the way of safe haven for a woman alone and clearly in distress. "Ma'am," he said, his voice firm but kind, "the last train has gone. There won't be another until morning, and this storm is worsening. It's not safe for you out here." Her eyes darted around, as if seeking an escape route, but there was only the encroaching darkness and the endless, snow-swept plains. A tremor ran through her that had nothing to do with the cold. I'll be fine," she insisted, a pathetic attempt at bravado that tugged at something deep within him. "Please, miss," Ethan said, taking a small step closer. "Allow me to offer you some assistance. My ranch is not far. You'll find a warm fire, a hot meal, and a safe place to spend the night. No questions asked. If that's your wish." Her gaze searched his, looking for trickery, for malice, but found only a steady, compassionate concern in his weathered face and clear blue eyes. He could see the internal battle raging within her, pride warring with desperation, suspicion with the undeniable need for shelter. "Why would you do that?" she whispered, her voice laced with a weariness that spoke of too many disappointments, too many betrayals. For a stranger? Ethan considered her question for a moment. Because no one should be left to face a night like this alone, he said simply. Because my mother taught me better. And because, ma'am, you look like you could use a moment's peace. He extended a gloved hand, not to touch her, but as a gesture of goodwill. My name is Ethan Caldwell. My ranch, the Circle C, is just over that rise. The fight seemed to drain out of her, replaced by an exhaustion so profound she swayed slightly. She looked at his outstretched hand, then back at his face, and finally, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world, she gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Annalise, she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. Annalise Dubois. He helped her to her feet, her body surprisingly light, fragile as a bird. He took her small, battered carpet bag, its lightness a testament to her meager possessions. He led her towards Midnight, who stood patiently, his warm breath misting in the frigid air. The journey to the ranch was made in near silence, the wind too fierce for easy conversation. Annalise rode in front of him, cradled securely, her small form shielded somewhat from the biting wind by his larger frame. He could feel the tremors that still shook her, and he tightened his hold almost imperceptibly, offering what silent reassurance he could. As they crested the rise, the lights of the Circle C ranch house glowed ahead, a beacon of warmth and welcome in the vast, snowy darkness. It was a sprawling, sturdy structure, built of stone and timber, exuding an aura of permanence and prosperity. For Annalise, who had known only fear and flight for so long, it looked like a fortress, a sanctuary. And for Ethan, bringing this fragile stranger into his home felt like an act of profound, unspoken significance, a ripple in the quiet waters of his solitary life. The warmth of the Caldwell ranch house enveloped Annalise like a comforting embrace the moment Ethan ushered her through the heavy oak door. A grand stone fireplace dominated one wall of the main room, a cheerful blaze crackling within, casting dancing shadows on the polished wood floors and comfortable, well-crafted furniture. It was a room that spoke of quiet wealth, of taste, but more importantly, of home. A woman, stout and motherly, with kind eyes and flour dusting her apron, bustled forward. Mr. Caldwell, you're back. Mercy, what a storm. And, oh, my dear child. Her gaze fell upon Annalise, and her expression softened with immediate concern. This is Mrs. Peterson, my housekeeper, Ethan said, his voice gentle. Mrs. Peterson, this is Miss Annalise Dubois. She was stranded at the station. She'll be staying the night. Mrs. Peterson needed no further explanation. She clucked like a mother hen, her eyes taking in Annalise's pale face, her shivering form, and the haunted look in her eyes. You poor thing. Come in by the fire. You look half frozen and starved. She took Annalise's arm with a gentle but firm grip, leading her towards the hearth. Ethan, fetch some warm broth. And tell Jed to see to Midnight. Ethan nodded, handing Annalise's meager bag to the housekeeper before disappearing towards the kitchen. Left with Mrs. Peterson, Annalise felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her so powerfully her knees nearly buckled. The housekeeper, with surprising strength, guided her to a plush armchair near the fire. There now, dearie. You're safe here. No need to fret. The simple words, spoken with such genuine kindness, brought an unexpected lump to Annalise's throat. Safety. It was a concept that had become almost foreign to her. Mrs. Peterson efficiently helped her out of her damp, threadbare coat, tooting at its inadequacy against the Montana winter. We'll find you something warmer, and a hot bath will do you a world of good. Ethan returned with a steaming mug of broth, which he handed to Annalise. Her hands were shaking so much he had to steady the mug for her as she took the first sip. The rich, savory liquid was like a balm to her chilled body and frayed nerves. Thank you, she managed, her voice still weak. You're very kind. Ethan merely inclined his head, his eyes filled with a quiet concern that was more comforting than any effusive words. Mrs. Peterson will see to your needs, Miss Dubois. Please make yourself at home. Rest. He then excused himself, saying he had some ranch business to attend to, though Annalise suspected he was merely giving her space, allowing her to acclimate without the pressure of his presence. Mrs. Peterson, true to her word, drew a hot bath for Annalise in a cozy, well-appointed guest room. The room was simple but elegant, with a comfortable bed piled high with quilts, a small writing desk, and a window overlooking the snow-covered yard. It was a haven of peace and tranquility. As Annalise soaked in the steaming water, the grime and chill of her journey washing away, she felt some of the tension begin to seep out of her tired muscles. But the fear, the deep-seated anxiety that had been her constant companion for weeks, still lingered, a cold knot in the pit of her stomach. After her bath, Mrs. Peterson laid out clean, warm nightclothes and a thick woolen dressing gown. She had also brought a tray with more broth, fresh bread, and cheese. "Eat up, dear," she urged. "You need your strength." Annalise ate slowly, savoring each bite. It was the first proper meal she'd had in days. Later, tucked into the soft, warm bed, the fire in the room's small hearth casting a gentle glow, she listened to the wind howling outside. But here, within these sturdy walls, it sounded distant, its menace lessened. She thought of Ethan Caldwell, his quiet strength, the unexpected kindness in his eyes. Why had he helped her? Men with his apparent wealth and standing didn't usually concern themselves with penniless, desperate women found at train stations. Yet, there had been no hint of anything untoward in his manner, only genuine concern and respect. She clutched the soft quilt, a profound sense of unreality washing over her. Just hours ago, she had been facing a night of exposure, possibly death, in the bitter cold. Now, she was safe, warm, and fed, sheltered by a stranger whose motives she couldn't quite fathom but whose kindness felt like a lifeline. Sleep was slow to come, her mind still racing, replaying the events that had led her to this desperate pass. But eventually, cocooned in warmth and an unfamiliar sense of security, exhaustion claimed her. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Annalise Dubois slept without the icy grip of immediate fear clutching at her heart. The sanctuary Ethan Caldwell had offered was more than just physical shelter. It was a momentary reprieve for her wounded spirit. The following days at the Circle C ranch settled into a quiet rhythm for Annalise. The storm raged outside for 2 more days, blanketing the world in a pristine, silent white, effectively isolating the ranch and, by extension, Annalise from the outside world she so feared. She spent much of her time in the guest room, or by the fire in the main room, slowly regaining her physical strength. Mrs. Peterson was a constant, comforting presence, bringing her meals, ensuring the fire was always lit, and engaging her in gentle, undemanding conversation. She spoke of the ranch, of Mr. Caldwell's late wife, Sarah, with a quiet reverence, painting a picture of a deep and abiding love that had been tragically cut short. She spoke of Ethan's fairness as a boss, his dedication to his land and his men, and his inherent goodness. Annalise listened, absorbing these details, piecing together an image of the man who had rescued her. Ethan himself maintained a respectful, almost formal distance, yet his concern was palpable. He would inquire after her health each morning, his gaze searching, ensuring she was comfortable. He never pressed her for information about her past or her circumstances, a reticence for which Annalise was profoundly grateful. She was not yet ready to voice the horrors she had fled. He went about his ranch duties, overseeing the care of his vast herds, conferring with his foreman, Jedediah "Jed" Stone, a man as rugged and dependable as the mountains that framed the valley. Sometimes, Annalise would see Ethan from her window, a powerful figure on horseback, moving with purpose and authority across his snow-covered domain. He seemed a part of the land itself, strong, resilient, enduring. As her strength returned, Annalise began to feel restless. She was not used to idleness. She was a nurse, accustomed to being busy, to caring for others. She started by helping Mrs. Peterson in small ways, folding linens, polishing silver, tasks that kept her hands occupied and her mind from dwelling too much on her precarious situation. Mrs. Peterson accepted her help with a knowing smile. "Good to keep busy, dear," An idle mind is the devil's workshop, my mother used to say one afternoon, as she was helping shell peas in the warm kitchen. Annalise tentatively broached the subject of her profession. I'm a nurse, Mrs. Peterson, she said quietly, her gaze fixed on the bowl in her lap. Or I was. Mrs. Peterson paused in her own work, her expression kind. A noble profession, child. Takes a special kind of heart to care for the sick and injured. I miss it, Annalise confessed, a wistful note in her voice. Helping people. It gave me a purpose, Mrs. Peterson nodded. Purpose is important. Keeps a soul anchored. Ethan, entering the kitchen to fetch a cup of coffee, overheard the tail end of their conversation. He didn't comment directly, but later that day, he found Annalise in the main room, staring into the fire. Miss Du Bois, he began, his voice softer than usual. Mrs. Peterson mentioned you were a nurse. Annalise tensed slightly, wondering if this was the moment the questions would begin. Yes, Mr. Caldwell. It's a demanding calling, he said, his eyes thoughtful. Requires a great deal of compassion and skill. I believe it does, she replied, still guarded. He hesitated for a moment, then continued, My late wife, Sarah. She often spoke of the importance of good medical care, especially out here where folks are so spread out. We lost her to a fever that the doctor couldn't get a handle on. If we'd had someone with more experience. He trailed off, a shadow of old pain crossing his features. Annalise felt a pang of sympathy. She knew the limitations of frontier medicine, the heartbreaking losses that could occur despite best efforts. I'm very sorry for your loss, Mr. Caldwell, she said softly. He nodded, acknowledging her words. Thank you. I only mention it because, well, your skills are valuable, Miss Du Bois. Perhaps when you're feeling stronger and if you have a mind to, there might be ways you could contribute. If you wished, it wasn't a demand, or even a direct offer of employment, but a gentle suggestion, a door left slightly ajar. Annalise felt a flicker of something akin to hope. The thought of using her skills again, of being useful, was a powerful lure. But the fear was still there, the shadow of her past. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell, she said. I will consider it, he nodded, satisfied, and then changed the subject, asking her if she needed anything. The conversation, though brief, marked a subtle shift. Ethan had acknowledged her identity beyond that of a rescued woman, and in doing so had offered her a measure of dignity. The whispers of her past were still loud in her own mind, but for the first time, a fragile whisper of a possible future began to make itself heard. A week after her arrival, the worst of the snowstorms had passed, and a fragile winter sun cast long, blue shadows across the pristine landscape. Annalise, feeling stronger and more rested than she had in months, found herself increasingly drawn to the rhythms of ranch life. She still helped Mrs. Peterson, but she also began to venture out, bundled in a warm coat and boots that Mrs. Peterson had found for her. She watched the ranch hands, their faces ruddy with cold, as they went about their winter chores, feeding the cattle in the nearby pastures, mending fences, tending to the horses. There was a camaraderie among them, a sense of shared purpose that she found admirable. One morning, a young cowhand named Billy took a nasty fall from a ladder in the hayloft, twisting his ankle badly. Doc Miller, the town physician from Redemption Creek, was summoned, but he was miles away on another call and wouldn't arrive for hours. Billy was in considerable pain, his ankle already swelling. Annalise, hearing the commotion, instinctively stepped forward. Let me see, she said, her voice calm and professional. The men, surprised, parted to let her through. Ethan, who had been overseeing the situation, looked at her with a questioning glance. She met his gaze steadily. I can help, Mr. Caldwell. If you'll permit me, he nodded, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Please. Annalise knelt beside the groaning cowhand. With gentle, practiced hands, she examined the injured ankle. It's likely a severe sprain, possibly a fracture, she announced after a moment. We need to immobilize it and reduce the swelling until the doctor arrives. She issued quiet instructions, sending one man for clean cloths and cold water, another for splints she improvised from smooth pieces of wood. Her confidence and competence were undeniable. The men, initially hesitant, quickly responded to her calm authority. Even Billy seemed to relax slightly under her ministrations. She expertly cleaned a small abrasion, applied a cold compress, and then, with surprising strength and dexterity, splinted the ankle securely. By the time Doc Miller finally arrived, puffing and blowing from his hurried journey, Annalise had made Billy as comfortable as possible. The doctor, a portly man with a kind, weary face, examined her handiwork with a critical eye. "Well now," he said, raising an eyebrow, "looks like someone here knows what they're about. Good work, young lady. You've saved me half the trouble." He glanced at Ethan. "Where did you find this gem, Caldwell?" Ethan simply smiled faintly. "Miss Du Bois is a guest, Doc." Later that day, after Doc Miller had confirmed Annalise's initial assessment and departed, leaving instructions for Billy's care, Ethan sought Annalise out. He found her in the ranch library, a small, cozy room lined with books, a place she had discovered and clearly enjoyed. "Miss Du Bois," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Annalise?" She corrected him gently, a small smile playing on her lips. It was the first time she had invited such familiarity. He returned the smile. "Annalise, I wanted to thank you for what you did for Billy. You handled that situation with remarkable skill." "It's what I do, Mr. Caldwell," she said, her gaze dropping to the book in her lap. "Or what I used to do, Ethan," he said, mirroring her earlier correction. She looked up, a hint of surprise in her eyes. "Ethan," she repeated softly. A comfortable silence settled between them for a moment. "You have a gift, Annalise," he said finally. "A true healing touch. It's a rare thing." "My mother was a midwife," she said, a note of wistfulness in her voice. "She taught me much. Then I trained formally as a nurse in St. Louis." "St. Louis is a long way from Redemption Creek," Ethan observed, his tone carefully neutral, not pressing, but inviting. Annalise traced the cover of her book. "Yes, it is." She hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "I was working in a mining town up north." Brightwood, the name meant nothing to Ethan, but he filed it away. It wasn't a good place. Not for a woman alone. Especially not for one who sees things she shouldn't. Her voice trembled slightly, and she stopped, as if the words were too dangerous to speak aloud. Ethan's expression softened with understanding. He didn't push her. Instead, he said, "This ranch, Annalise, it can be a good place, a safe place. My wife, Sarah, she loved it here. She found peace here." He paused, then added, his voice very low, "I've been alone for a long time, Annalise. This house, it's been quiet. Too quiet." The admission hung in the air, a revelation of his own loneliness, a shared vulnerability that forged a new, deeper connection between them. Annalise looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not just the wealthy ranch owner, but a man who, like her, carried his own sorrows, his own unfulfilled longings. In that moment, the distance between the millionaire cowboy and the fugitive nurse narrowed considerably. The seeds of trust, so tentatively planted, were beginning to send down roots. The days that followed saw a subtle but definite shift in the dynamic between Ethan and Annalise. The shared vulnerability in the library had opened a door, and slowly, cautiously, they began to step through it. Annalise started taking her meals with Ethan in the main dining room, rather than with Mrs. Peterson in the kitchen or alone in her room. Their conversations, initially stilted, gradually became more fluid, more personal. She spoke more of her nursing experiences, of the challenges and rewards, carefully skirting the shadows of Brightwood. He, in turn, shared stories of building the Circle C, of his early struggles, his dreams for the land. He spoke of Sarah with a gentle sadness, but also with a warmth that told Annalise his heart, though wounded, was not closed. Annalise found herself offering to help with the ranch ledgers, her neat hand and quick mind for figures proving surprisingly useful. Ethan, initially hesitant to impose, soon found her assistance invaluable. They would spend evenings in his office, working side by side, a comfortable silence punctuated by quiet discussion. The vast, empty spaces in Ethan's life, spaces he hadn't consciously acknowledged, were so profound, began to feel less cavernous with Annalise's quiet, intelligent presence. He found himself looking forward to their evenings, to the soft lamplight illuminating her focused expression as she worked, the occasional thoughtful frown, the rare but beautiful smile that would light up her face. For Annalise, the Circle C was becoming more than just a sanctuary. It was starting to feel like something akin to home. The constant fear that had been her companion for so long began to recede, replaced by a fragile sense of peace. She found joy in small things, the beauty of the snow-covered landscape, the warmth of the fire, Mrs. Peterson's hearty laughter, even the gruff but genuine respect of the ranch hands, who had quickly come to admire Miss Annalise for her quiet competence and kindness. Yet, the shadow of her past remained, a dark undercurrent to her growing contentment. One afternoon, Jed Stone, the foreman, returned from a trip to Redemption Creek for supplies. He found Ethan in the stables, overseeing the care of a lame mare. Jed's weathered face was unusually grim. "Boss," he said, his voice low. "There was a man in town today, asking questions." Ethan straightened, his senses immediately on alert. "What kind of questions? About whom?" "Asking about a woman," Jed said, his gaze flicking towards the main house, where a light shone in the window of the room Annalise often used for reading. A young woman, new in the territory, maybe traveling alone. Described her as, well, it sounded a lot like Miss Annalise. Ethan's blood ran cold. Did he give a name? His own or hers? Called himself Blackwood. Silas Blackwood. Jed spat the name as if it tasted foul. Said he was looking for a runaway employee, someone who owed him. Had a nasty look about him, boss. The kind of man who deals in misery. Silas Blackwood. The name struck Ethan like a physical blow. He had a vague recollection of hearing it before, associated with shady dealings, ruthless ambition, a man who operated on the fringes of the law and often stepped over it. Annalise had never mentioned a name, but the fear that flashed in her eyes whenever she alluded to her past suddenly had a focus, a terrifyingly concrete form. Unbeknownst to either man, Annalise, on her way to the kitchen for a glass of water, had stepped out onto the porch for a breath of crisp air. The stable door was slightly ajar, and Jed's voice, though low, carried clearly in the still afternoon. She heard the name Silas Blackwood. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Her breath hitched in her throat, and a wave of icy dread washed over her, so potent it nearly buckled her knees. Blackwood. He had found her. Or he was close. The fragile piece she had so carefully constructed shattered into a million pieces. The sanctuary had been breached, if only by a name. She pressed a hand to her mouth to stifle a cry, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had to tell Ethan. She had to tell him everything. The risk she had brought to his doorstep, the danger now hovering over this place of kindness and refuge, was suddenly terrifyingly real. With trembling legs, she turned and fled back into the house, the name Blackwood echoing in her mind like a death knell. The brief idyll was over. The shadow she had outrun for so long was finally, inexorably, catching up. Annalise burst into Ethan's office, her face ashen, her eyes wide with a terror that tore at his heart. He and Jed had just returned from the stables, the grim news hanging heavy between them. Seeing her state, Ethan knew instantly she had overheard. "Annalise," he said, his voice urgent as he moved towards her. "What is it? What did you hear?" "Blackwood," she choked out, her voice trembling uncontrollably. "Silas Blackwood. He's the man I fled from. He's why I was at the station. He's why I have nothing, why I was so desperate." She sank into a chair, tears streaming down her face, the carefully constructed dam of her composure finally breaking. "Oh, Ethan, I'm so sorry. I've brought this danger to you, to your home." Ethan knelt beside her, taking her trembling hands in his. "Annalise, listen to me. You've brought nothing but good to this house. Whatever this man Blackwood is, whatever he's done, it's not your fault." Jed, standing awkwardly by the door, cleared his throat. "Begging your pardon, Miss Annalise, but if this Blackwood fellow is who I think he is, he's trouble looking for a place to happen. You didn't invite it, but he'll come here, she whispered, her gaze darting towards the window as if expecting to see Blackwood's malevolent face peering in. He's ruthless. He won't stop until he finds me. Then let him come, Ethan said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. His eyes, usually so calm and kind, now glinted with a steely resolve. This ranch, Annalise, is your sanctuary. I told you that, and I meant it. He will not touch you here, he looked at Jed. Spread the word among the men. No heroics, but keep your eyes open. I want to know the instant anyone unfamiliar sets foot on Circle C land. Jed nodded, his expression grimly determined. Will do, boss. The boys won't take kindly to anyone threatening Miss Annalise. He gave Annalise a respectful nod and departed, leaving her alone with Ethan. With Ethan's steady presence beside her, and the immediate, unquestioning support he offered, Annalise found the courage to finally tell him the full story. She spoke of Brightwood, the remote, lawless mining town dominated by Silas Blackwood, who owned the largest mine and, effectively, the town itself. She had been hired as a nurse for the miners, many of whom suffered from accidents and illnesses due to the appalling conditions Blackwood forced them to work under. He was a monster, she said, her voice thick with remembered fear and disgust. He cut corners on safety, paid starvation wages, and silenced anyone who dared to complain. I saw things, Ethan, terrible things. Men dying needlessly, families destroyed by his greed. She had tried to help, to advocate for better conditions, but Blackwood had seen her as a threat. He tried to intimidate me. When that didn't work, he framed me. Accused me of stealing medical supplies, of incompetence. He ruined my reputation, turned the town against me. I heard whispers that he planned worse, that he wouldn't let me leave Brightwood alive with what I knew. She had fled in the dead of night, with only what she could carry, taking the first available transport south, a rickety stagecoach, then a series of disjointed train journeys, always looking over her shoulder, until she had ended up, penniless and terrified, at Redemption Creek. Ethan listened, his expression hardening with each revealed injustice. The thought of what this woman had endured, the cruelty she had faced alone, filled him with a cold rage. When she finished, her voice raw with emotion, he gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. You did nothing wrong, Annalise, he said, his voice filled with conviction. You were brave. You stood up to evil. That is a testament to your character, not a mark against it. But he's powerful, she said, her fear still palpable. He has money, influence. So do I, Ethan stated simply, without arrogance, but with undeniable authority. And I have something more valuable. Good men, loyal friends, and a righteous cause. This is my land, Annalise, my home. And you, he paused, his gaze meeting hers, intense and unwavering. You are under my protection. Blackwood will find that the Circle C is not some lawless mining camp he can bully into submission. Later that evening, Doc Miller made an unannounced visit. He'd heard the same rumors Jed had about Blackwood's inquiries. Ethan, he said, his usually jovial face serious, Silas Blackwood is bad news, vulture of a man. If he's after Miss Du Bois, she's in genuine peril. The man has a reputation for permanently silencing his problems. He won't succeed here. Doc, Ethan said firmly. Doc Miller looked at Annalise, his eyes kind. My dear, whatever you're running from, you seem to have run into the right hands. Ethan Caldwell is as steadfast as these mountains. But be careful, both of you. His visit, while confirming their fears, also brought a measure of comfort. It showed that they were not entirely alone, that even in a rough and tumble town like Redemption Creek, there were decent folk who would stand against a man like Blackwood. As the night drew in, a new tension settled over the Circle C. The warmth and peace of the preceding weeks were now overlaid with a sense of watchful anticipation. Annalise, though still afraid, felt a new strength emanating from Ethan's quiet resolve and the loyalty of those around him. She was no longer just a fugitive. She was part of something larger, a small community preparing to defend one of its own. The fear was still there, but it was no longer paralyzing. It was now mixed with a defiant hope, a hope kindled by the unwavering courage of the millionaire cowboy who had offered her not just shelter, but a shield against the darkness. The next few days were taut with anticipation. Ethan moved with a quiet, focused intensity, organizing his defenses. He didn't expect an army, but Blackwood was known to hire ruthless men. The Circle C ranch hands, already fiercely loyal to Ethan and increasingly fond of Annalise, needed little encouragement. They checked their firearms, patrolled the ranch boundaries with increased vigilance, and reported even the slightest unusual activity. Jed Stone, his weathered face set in grim lines, coordinated their efforts, his experience from past skirmishes with rustlers and renegades proving invaluable. Annalise, though racked with guilt for bringing this trouble upon them, refused to hide. She continued her work, assisting Mrs. Peterson, tending to the small herb garden she had started near the kitchen, even helping Ethan with the ranch accounts. Her presence, her quiet determination not to be cowed, served as an inspiration to the men. She was no longer the terrified, shivering woman from the train station. She was Annalise Dubois, a woman of courage and resilience, and they would fight to protect her. Ethan made a point of being visibly present with Annalise, riding with her around the inner pastures, making it clear to anyone watching that she was under his personal protection. These rides were a strange mixture of tension and burgeoning affection. The unspoken threat loomed, yet in those moments, with the vast, snow-dusted landscape around them and the crisp winter air on their faces, a deeper bond formed. They spoke of their hopes for the future, carefully, tentatively, as if afraid to voice them too loudly lest they be snatched away. "Ethan," Annalise said one afternoon, as they paused on a ridge overlooking the sprawling ranch, "I don't know how I can ever repay you for this." Ethan turned in his saddle to look at her, his expression serious. "There is nothing to repay, Annalise. Decency isn't a debt. It's a responsibility. Besides," a rare, soft smile touched his lips, "having you here, it's made this old house feel like a home again." Her heart swelled at his words. The fear of Blackwood was a cold stone in her stomach, but Ethan's unwavering support, his growing affection, was a warmth that spread through her, giving her courage. The waiting, however, was the hardest part. Every distant rider, every unexpected sound, sent a jolt of anxiety through the ranch. Then, late one afternoon, as the sun began to dip towards the western peaks, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a lone rider was spotted approaching the main ranch road. It was not Blackwood, but a nervous-looking messenger from Redemption Creek, bearing a note. Ethan read it, his face grim. "Blackwood has arrived in Redemption Creek," he announced to Annalise and Jed, who had gathered in his office. "He's staying at the saloon, boasting that he's come to reclaim his property, a runaway employee who stole from him. He's offering a reward." Annalise flinched as if struck. "He means me. He's trying to turn the town against you, to legitimize his pursuit," Ethan said, his voice hard. "But he underestimates the people here, and he certainly underestimates us." He crumpled the note in his fist. "Let him posture in town. He'll have to come here to make his play, and we'll be ready that night." An extra watch was set. The ranch house was quiet, but it was the quiet of a coiled spring. Annalise found it impossible to sleep. She sat by her window, looking out at the moonlit snow, her mind racing. Ethan, sensing her distress, found her there. He didn't speak, just pulled up a chair and sat with her, his presence a silent comfort in the darkness. "I'm scared, Ethan," she finally whispered. "Not just for myself. For you. For everyone here." He reached out and took her hand, his grip strong and reassuring. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, Annalise. It's acting in spite of it. And you, my dear, have more courage than anyone I know." He paused, then said, his voice very low, "Whatever happens, Annalise, I will not let him take you. I swear it." His words, spoken with such quiet intensity, resonated deep within her. She leaned her head against his shoulder, finding solace in his strength. The stand they were about to make was not just about protecting her from a cruel man. It was about defending the very principles the Circle C stood for: justice, sanctuary, and the right to live free from tyranny. As dawn approached, painting the eastern sky with pale strokes of light, a sense of inevitability settled over them. The time for waiting was over. The confrontation was coming. The morning dawned cold and clear, the sunlight glinting off the crisp snow, belying the tension that hung heavy in the air. Scouts stationed on the perimeter reported a party of riders approaching, 5 of them, led by a man whose expensive, city-style clothes looked out of place in the rugged landscape. Silas Blackwood had finally arrived. Ethan stood on the porch of the main house, Annalise a step behind him, her hand gripping his arm, not in fear, but for strength. Jed Stone and a dozen of the most seasoned ranch hands, armed and resolute, flanked them, forming a formidable line. They were not looking for a fight, but they were undeniably prepared for one. Blackwood and his 4 hired thugs reined in their horses just beyond the ranch gate, a calculated distance. Blackwood, a man in his late 40s with a florid face, small, cruel eyes, and an arrogant sneer, dismounted. He was shorter than Ethan, but carried himself with an air of overblown importance. "Ethan Caldwell, I presume?" Blackwood called out, his voice oily and condescending. Ethan nodded curtly. "I am. And you are trespassing on my property, Mr. Blackwood." Blackwood chuckled. A dry, unpleasant sound. "I've come for what's mine. A thieving employee, a woman named Annalise Dubois. I have a warrant for her arrest, signed and sealed." He produced a document from his coat pocket with a flourish. Annalise stiffened, but Ethan's grip on her arm tightened reassuringly. "Your piece of paper means nothing here, Blackwood," Ethan said, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable edge of steel. "Miss Dubois is under my protection. She has committed no crime that I am aware of, other than fleeing injustice." "Injustice?" Blackwood scoffed. "She stole from me. Medical supplies, money. She's a common thief and a liar." It was then that Annalise stepped forward, her voice, though trembling slightly, ringing clear and true in the cold air. "You are the liar, Silas Blackwood. You are the thief. You stole lives with your greed. You stole hope with your cruelty. I took nothing from you that wasn't already mine. My dignity, my freedom." Blackwood's face contorted with rage. "You insolent little—" "Seize her!" he snarled at his men. The 4 thugs, hard-bitten men with guns holstered low on their hips, began to move forward. But Jed and the Circle C men mirrored their movement, rifles raised, expressions grim. The air crackled with imminent violence. "I wouldn't advise that, Blackwood," Ethan said, his voice dropping to a dangerously low growl. "You are outnumbered and outmatched. These men are defending their home and a good woman. Your hired guns are here for pay." "Their conviction won't run as deep," one of Blackwood's men, perhaps sensing the futility of their position, hesitated. Blackwood, enraged, drew his own pistol. "She's mine. I'll not be defied by some dirt-scrabbling rancher." Before he could aim, before anyone could react, a shot rang out, not from the ranch hands, nor from Blackwood's men. The pistol was smacked from Blackwood's hand, skittering across the frozen ground. All eyes turned to the source, Doc Miller, astride his sturdy pony at the edge of the ranch yard, a smoking rifle in his hands. He'd clearly ridden out at first light. Now, Silas," Doc Miller called out, his voice surprisingly firm. "Let's not have any bloodshed. Redemption Creek doesn't take kindly to bullies, and Mr. Caldwell here has a lot of friends." Just then, another group of riders appeared on the road, the town marshal, Elias Thorne, looking uncomfortable but determined, accompanied by half a dozen deputized townsmen. Thorne had clearly been spurred into action, perhaps by Doc Miller's earlier urgings, or by Blackwood's own odious reputation making itself known. "Blackwood," Marshal Thorne called out, his voice strained but official, "there's been some questions raised about the legitimacy of that warrant of yours, and some other outstanding complaints about your business practices from up north have conveniently found their way to my desk." Blackwood stared, his face turning a mottled shade of purple. His hired guns, seeing the tables decisively turned, began to back away, their bravado evaporating. They had no desire to face down an entire community. "This is an outrage." Blackwood spluttered, clutching his stinging hand. You can't do this. Oh, I think we can, Ethan said, stepping forward. Your reign of intimidation ends here, Blackwood. Annalise Dubois is a free woman. She will testify to your crimes, and I will ensure she has the platform to do so. Now, I suggest you and your men leave my property, and this territory, before you find yourselves facing more serious charges than trespassing. Blackwood, defeated and humiliated, his power play utterly dismantled, glared at Annalise, his eyes filled with venom. But there was nothing more he could do. Outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and with the unexpected arrival of the law, his bluster was revealed as hollow. Muttering curses, he retrieved his fallen pistol, remounted his horse, and with one last hateful look, rode away, his thugs trailing sullenly behind him. Marshal Thorne tipped his hat to Ethan. Seems you had it handled, Caldwell. But we'll see. He leaves the territory, as Blackwood and his men disappeared down the road. A collective sigh of relief went through the Circle C defenders. The immediate threat was over. Annalise turned to Ethan, tears of gratitude and relief shining in her eyes. He simply smiled, a tired but triumphant smile, and pulled her into a gentle embrace. The sun, now higher in the sky, seemed to shine a little brighter on the Circle C ranch. The reckoning had come, and justice, for once, had prevailed. The departure of Silas Blackwood and his men left a profound sense of relief washing over the Circle C ranch. The tension that had gripped them for days finally dissipated, replaced by a quiet, joyful exhaustion. The ranch hands clapped each other on the back, their faces beaming. Jed Stone gave a rare, wide grin. Mrs. Peterson bustled out of the house with a tray of freshly baked cookies and hot coffee, her eyes shining with pride. Annalise, still held in Ethan's embrace, felt as though a tremendous weight had been lifted from her soul. The shadow that had hounded her for so long was finally banished, not by her own solitary efforts, but by the collective courage and kindness of new friends, and the unwavering strength of the man who held her. It's over, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, looking up at Ethan. He's gone. Ethan looked down at her, his gaze filled with a tenderness that made her heart soar. Yes, he said softly. He's gone. And you are safe, Annalise. Truly safe. He gently brushed a stray strand of hair from her forehead. You were magnificent. Standing up to him like that. You showed him the true meaning of strength. She blushed slightly. I couldn't have done it without you, Ethan. Without everyone here. In the days that followed, a new, more joyful atmosphere settled over the ranch. The shared experience of facing down Blackwood had forged an even stronger bond between everyone at the Circle C. Annalise was no longer just a guest or an employee. She was one of them, a cherished member of their unconventional family. Her nursing skills were increasingly called upon, not just for minor injuries on the ranch, but for folks in the surrounding area who heard of her gentle competence. Doc Miller, delighted to have a skilled assistant, often consulted with her and began to speak of the need for a proper clinic in Redemption Creek, with Annalise perhaps playing a key role. The future, which had once seemed so bleak and uncertain for Annalise, now stretched before her, bright with possibility. One evening, as a gentle snow began to fall outside, Ethan found Annalise in the library, curled up in her favorite armchair by the fire, reading. He watched her for a moment, the soft glow of the flames illuminating her serene face. The transformation from the haunted, shivering woman he had found at the train station was nothing short of miraculous. She was still slender, still possessed of a quiet grace, but now her eyes shone with an inner light, a peace that radiated from her. He walked over and sat in the chair opposite hers. Annalise, he began, his voice a little hesitant, a rare occurrence for him. She looked up, a welcoming smile on her face. Ethan, we need to talk, he said, his expression serious, but with an underlying warmth. About your future. About our future. Her smile softened, her eyes questioning. I know you're free to go wherever you wish now, he continued. Blackwood won't trouble you again. You could return to St. Louis, or find a position in a bigger town. Do you want me to leave, Ethan? she asked quietly, a flicker of her old vulnerability in her eyes. No, he said, his voice emphatic. No, Annalise. That's the last thing I want. He leaned forward, taking her hands in his. This ranch, this house, it was just a place before you came. A well-run business, a comfortable dwelling. But you've brought life back into it. You've brought light into my life. His gaze was intense, his sincerity undeniable. Annalise Dubois, I have grown to care for you very deeply, more than I ever thought possible again after Sarah. I love you. Annalise, tears welled in her eyes, tears of joy this time. Oh, Ethan, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. I love you too. From the moment you showed me such kindness at the station, when I had lost all hope, you saved me in more ways than one. Inch. He raised her hands to his lips, kissing them tenderly. Then stay, Annalise. Stay and build a life with me here. Be my wife. Be the heart of this home, the light of my life. For all our days, yes, she breathed, her smile radiant through her tears. Yes, Ethan, 1,000 times yes. He pulled her gently from her chair and into his arms, holding her close, his heart overflowing. It was a proposal made not in grandeur, but in the quiet intimacy of a shared life already begun. A love forged in adversity and tempered by mutual respect and deep affection. A few weeks later, on a crisp, sunny winter morning, with the snow-covered landscape sparkling like a diamond, Ethan Caldwell and Annalise Dubois were married. It was a simple ceremony, held in the main room of the Circle C ranch house, in front of the roaring fire. Mrs. Peterson, beaming like a proud mother, stood as Annalise's witness. Jed Stone, his weathered face softened with emotion, stood as Ethan's. Doc Miller officiated, his voice filled with genuine warmth. The ranch hands, scrubbed and dressed in their Sunday best, filled the room, their faces reflecting the joy of the occasion. Annalise, radiant in a simple cream-colored dress that Mrs. Peterson had lovingly helped her sew, looked at Ethan, her eyes shining with love and happiness. He, in turn, looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. As they exchanged their vows, their voices clear and strong, there was a profound sense of rightness, of a destiny fulfilled. This was not just the union of two people, but the cementing of a new family, a testament to the power of second chances, of hope reborn from despair, and of love found in the most unexpected of places. The celebration afterwards was heartfelt and joyous, filled with laughter, good food, and the warmth of true community. The millionaire cowboy and the shivering nurse he had rescued from a desolate train station had found their happily ever after, not in a fairy tale castle, but in the rugged heart of the Montana frontier, their love story a beacon of hope for all who knew them. Years turned into decades, and the Circle C Ranch under the stewardship of Ethan and Annalise Caldwell thrived not just as a cattle empire, but as a beacon of community, compassion, and progress. Their love, strong and true, was the bedrock upon which their life was built. They were blessed with 3 children, 2 robust sons with Ethan's quiet strength and Annalise's kind eyes, and a daughter who inherited her mother's healing spirit and her father's determination. The laughter of children once again echoed through the halls of the ranch house, a joyous sound that Ethan had thought he would never hear again. Annalise, true to her calling, didn't just remain a devoted wife and mother. With Ethan's full support and resources, she established a small but well-equipped clinic in Redemption Creek, which had grown from a rough outpost into a respectable town. She trained other young women as nurses, extending her healing touch far beyond the confines of the ranch. Her clinic became renowned throughout the territory for its care and compassion, a place where the injured found skilled hands and the sick found solace. Ethan, guided by Annalise's gentle wisdom and his own innate sense of fairness, became known not just as a wealthy rancher, but as a philanthropist and a force for positive change. He invested in schools, supported local businesses, and championed fair labor practices, his influence shaping the growing territory for the better. The story of how they met, the millionaire cowboy and the shivering nurse at the train station, became a beloved local legend, a tale told around campfires and in parlors, a testament to improbable love and the triumph of good over evil. Their children grew, married, and had children of their own, and the Caldwell legacy deepened, its roots intertwined with the very fabric of the land they loved. Mrs. Peterson remained with them until her peaceful passing in old age, a cherished member of the family. Jed Stone eventually retired, his place taken by Ethan and Annalise's eldest son, but he always remained a close friend and confidant. Doc Miller, until his own dying day, never tired of telling anyone who would listen how he'd known from the start that Annalise was a gem, as centuries blurred into millennia. The physical structures of the Circle C ranch eventually succumbed to the relentless march of time, the stone and timber returning to the earth from which they came. Redemption Creek, too, transformed, its name perhaps changing, its original buildings lost to memory and dust. Yet, the spirit of what Ethan and Annalise had built endured. Their story, passed down through countless generations, evolved from local legend into a foundational myth of the region. Archaeologists, sifting through the soil thousands of years later in what was once the Montana Territory, would occasionally unearth a fragment, a piece of worked stone from the ranch house, a rusted tool, a shard of fine china, puzzling over the advanced society that had once thrived in this now-altered landscape. They wouldn't know the names Ethan and Annalise, not precisely, but the cultural DNA of the civilizations that rose and fell in that valley carried an echo, a whisper of their values. Stories persisted of a great protector and a gentle healer, figures from a distant golden age who had established a sanctuary of justice and compassion, whose love had been so powerful it had seeded the very land with kindness. Advanced societal simulations, run on unimaginably complex computational engines in the year 7600 AD, attempting to model the ideal conditions for resilient and compassionate societies, would sometimes generate anomalous data points from this specific geographic region. The models would hint at an unusually robust kindness quotient, a deeply embedded cultural predisposition towards altruism and mutual support that defied purely material explanations. Scholars of deep history, studying these anomalies, might theorize about an ancient founder effect, a potent early influence that had shaped the ethical trajectory of the region for millennia. They would speak of the enduring power of foundational narratives, of how acts of courage and love performed in one era could ripple outwards, shaping the moral landscape for eons. Though their individual names were lost to the deep past, the essence of Ethan and Annalise's legacy lived on. The love they shared, the sanctuary they built, the justice they upheld, these became more than just memories. They became an invisible current, a guiding principle woven into the tapestry of time, a testament to the extraordinary truth that a single act of kindness, a single stand for what is right, a single great love, can indeed echo through eternity, shaping worlds yet unimagined. What followed that chance encounter at a desolate train station was not just legendary. It was transcendent, a quiet but persistent song of hope proving that the best parts of humanity, courage, compassion, and love could, in their own way, conquer even time itself.